if I can't have an honest conversation about me not wanting men in women's restrooms, then you've created a space where we cannot have a conversation. I mean, you're stopping intellectual dialogue, and then you're automatically saying that this is the moral platform, this is the moral plateau. We should all rise to this, and there's no gray, nothing else in between. And I think the left, I think that's sort of how the right feels. And to be honest, I don't even think it's a fair representation of the left. And I think most of the left, if I'm being honest, at least as polls that I've seen, we're against children having transition surgeries. We're against women being in men's sports and vice versa. And I don't think that the left has given a lot of context to democracy. It's just like, if we're being honest, democracy is majority rules. It's not what feels right. It's not what creates the most utility. It's majority.
But the majority can be bad though, right?
Absolutely. And I was just going to say there could be
we
negatives to
could
that.
democratically decide to repeal, was it the 13th Amendment abolishing slavery and
Absolutely.
put it back in. So
Absolutely.
like it could be democratically true, and if you did repeal the correct laws and maybe abolish the Civil Rights Act, you could legally put slavery back in place, and it'd
You're
be
right.
democratic, and
You're
you could
absolutely
really
right.
fight it.
You're absolutely right. And I was just going to say, I was going to preface that by saying majority rule isn't always best. I mean, I would say the same for our 2024 election. But I would have to say that our electorate and that our system worked as it was supposed to. Do I think it was the
Yes, it
best
did.
outcome?
Right.
Right. Do I think it was the best outcome? No, not at all. But to me, that is accepting the system and
And the funny
realizing that
thing is that the person who won doesn't accept that it worked.
you got it.
Every election, whether he wins or loses, must have been rigged, right?
You got it. You got it. And it's just like, and to me, I think on the left, it just, if I'm mainly talking about the left, so to me, we have the moral conversation, like the moral certainty. I think we have somewhat suppression disguised as compassion with hate speech.
Now here's what I'll say. It's an understandable thing. I think that when the left does that on topics that everyone agrees on that are less controversial, that principle is not really a bad thing. So let's say, for instance, someone is talking about make it, say, black people being an inferior race, or women having to women shouldn't be able to vote, and shouldn't be able to work, and should be forced back into the kitchen or something like that, right? If we had some
Yep.
really controversial things, we were saying some things that most people would disagree with, then I don't think they would really care that the left was intolerant, that they were kind of shutting down the conversation, that, oh, well, let's look at the black IQ statistics, and really, should we even fund black schools? I mean, we know they're not going to learn anything. Like, if someone was really coming at with some really bad stuff, and the left was like, look, we're not even going to platform that. We're not going to tolerate that. This is not the discussion. And you're just a racist, and you really don't care what you think. And we just kind of disown your whole character because of these ideas. If it's something like that, most people won't complain about it. But when it's something that a lot of people actually have some disagreements about on the trans issue, then they notice how we're willing to shut things down. But I think it's human nature to shut down things that we find disgusting, or borderline evil. I think it's just that the trans issue is something that we don't all agree on. That there's a lot of controversy around that.
So I have an interesting story that I'll tell you. So because it happened to me recently. I was in VR. I was in an app called Big Screen, and I was like, when you go in there, there are various rooms where like people are just either playing random movies or they'll be debating random topics. And I went in there, and they were talking about, there was a conservative that was talking about the stereotypes with black people and the statistics about how they commit crimes at a higher rate just in terms of population relative to other races. And I was like, you know what? That's likely true. And there was a bunch of people on the left that was in the room, And they were like, "Well, I already know where you're going with this," and decided to kick him out of the room. I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa!" Like, why are you kicking him out of the room? They kicked him out the room. I'm like, invite him back if you can. And I was just like, I was arguing with the people there. I'm like, this is bad. Like, number one, his statistics are they're coming from the FBI, and I'm likely I'm inclined to think that they're true. It's just like, and I'm black, and so it's just like, let's talk about why the statistics. And number one, they
Yeah,
let him
we
back.
are we are disproportionately
Right.
high in crime overall. I mean, violent crime at certain rates compared to
Compared
whites.
to
But let's be frank. Whites are similarly disproportionately high compared to Asians. It's not like whites are the top of
right.
the at the top
But
of the groups.
the interesting, and this is like, and man, you're gonna find this interesting. So when he came back, they let him back in after I asked them to bring him
So
back.
you persuaded them to bring him back.
Yep, I persuaded them to bring
I'm
him back.
surprised because a lot of times those folks are not too willing to change. So that was a good accomplishment there.
I persuaded them to bring him back, and there was a person that was on the left who was supposedly on my side, and I was asked a question: do I think racism is worse now relative to previous years in history? And I was like, no, I think racism has certainly gotten better over
I think it
time.
depends
And
on your time scale.
right, but I
Depends
was
on your
just,
time scale. So like it's way better now than it was in my grandparents' age
and that's
and my
exactly,
father's age.
and that's
Way better.
exactly what I was
It's
saying.
probably worse now than it was 10 years ago.
You got it. You got it. So
Yeah.
I went from a historical perspective, and I cited people like Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks. I'm like, it's not that anymore. But then a member of the left, or so like a dude in the room who was supposedly on my side, looked at me and said, "Well, I can already tell you grew up privileged. I can tell you." I'm like, hold up. I'm like, hold up.
You
And
grew up
then
in that black privilege.
yeah, he was like, I can already tell you grew up rich. I can already tell that you. I'm like, hold up. So how can you like what is my giveaway? And it's just like, and it was like, well, it's the way you talk. Well, I'm like, well, so then
That's funny, man.
so,
This is like the racism of the left, man. This is
Um,
that. Go ahead.
exactly, and man, when I say I kind of went off on him, and then everybody else in the room, I was just like, so I was like, let me give you an example of a true racist. I'm like, so now you're seeing it. I was taking the time to argue the socioeconomic factors of why I disagreed with, I forget whoever his name was in the room, and he was even like, now that was a racist statement. Even he was like, that was racist, and I'm like, so you don't see how you how me being able to articulate a position uniquely doesn't make me black in your eyes. I have to have came from a
Affluent background. You can't be
exactly,
poor, black, and smart. You can't do that.
exactly, like those. And I'm just like that that moral superiority from the left without really even knowing the depths of their position and not even allowing that to. So like part of me feels like he was red in the face, and that because they wanted to silo that conversation and stop it, we didn't even get to the root. And now when I actually, I'm like, let's continue the conversation, and then we got to the root of what he was talking about, and I'm like, let me expose you to yourself. And I said that to the room, and I was like, not only am I going to expose you to yourself, I'm going to expose you to the room as the true racist. And I think those are the conversations that I think the left stops when we have things like safe spaces, hate speech, where it's just like, number one, you could have a bias that you're not even aware of, but you're stopping the conversation automatically because you have moral superiority, or you think you have perceived uh, superiority. And it was like, I was kind of pissed off. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you, man. I was like, because he was, I can already tell. I can already tell. It was
I
like,
already know who you are and I've seen
I'm
them
like,
like you. I already know.
I'm like, and I'm like, all because I said that racism is relative to the past. I was like, I'm living off of the back of giants.
Well,
I'm like
not
Martin
now
Luther King.
to be fair though. people on both sides make that mistake. You talk to everybody, right now is the worst time it's ever been. And they've been saying that the whole time. It's always right now, which is the worst. I think there's a recency bias there.
That is, but it's just not true. It's just like objectively,
It's
it's
not
not
like, do you
true.
remember,
DL
Steven
Hughley.
Pinker?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's what we're talking about. Yeah,
Yep.
it was Dale Hughley arguing with Steven Pinker on Bill Maher,
Yep.
and then like Dale Hughley kept talking about how bad everything was, and Pinker was like, "Look, man, this is what I do. I'm a Harvard professor. I look at the data for global, health, global happiness ratings, poverty rates, death rates. If things are objectively, statistically better than they've ever been." And they'll talk to Steven and be like, "Hey, well, it seems like you're an optimist." Like, no, I'm not an optimist. I look at the data. I just explain the changes in the data. It's not that I'm optimistic. I'm telling you the
Absolutely.
truth.